Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Sermon, and I am happy to have you join us here today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those trying to create financial wellness, and we're going to look at different life cycles and events and explore them both financially and emotionally, because the healthier we are emotionally, the better financial decisions we make. Although we might be a little general in our discussion, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out to me. I can be reached on my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or you can post your comments and questions on YouTube, Facebook, the Roku channel, or anywhere else that you might be listening to us. So as I said, the healthier you are emotionally, the better decisions we tend to make. And navigating a divorce is difficult to begin with. Now, put across the table somebody who has narcissistic tendencies or maybe is a full-blown narcissist. This is going to heighten and make it more difficult. It's going to heighten the emotions. It's going to heighten the anxiety levels and make it more difficult to move on with your life in general. In the US, Mother's Day is coming up in less than 2 weeks on the 14th of May. And people either love the holidays or they hate the holidays. So what does divorcing a narcissist and Mother's Day have in common? Well, I'm not going to give it all away in the first 2 minutes. So keep listening. You'll find out. But I will say that I'm thrilled to have Kristen Darcy joining us today because she deals with all of this in depth. She is an award-winning author. She has been on a myriad of media. I love this topic. I love what you do. I'm privileged to have done several collaborations with you, and I'm just thrilled to have you back on the show. It's always great to have you on to talk with you. And Kristen, I'm looking forward to learning a lot today again. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love being with you too, because we approach the same, problem from a different point of view. And when you're faced with this high conflict narcissistic divorce, you need a team. You need somebody who can see things from a higher, different, perspective. And that's why I think this is really important to talk about, finances, your emotional belief system, and holidays. We chose Mother's Day because it's upcoming, but in my experience personally, and also with, my clients, holidays seem to be, can create moments of high risk.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to talk about all of that. And, I agree. I've said this on the show before. Sometimes it almost seems counterintuitive, but adding people to your team can actually get you a better outcome at a lower cost. And I think that's important. And one of the pieces of advice I always give people is you need to be aligned in your thinking and approach with each of your professionals that you put on your team, and the team as a whole needs to be aligned with each other. So all of that goes together. And I think a lot of this will just come out in our discussion. I am going to ask if you can share a little bit about your background so people really understand kind of the passion behind what you do, which I think is so important, and how you focus on what and why you focus on what you focus on.
Well, life is challenging. Yeah. And it was an amazing winding path to get here. I was 22 when I started my own company. I had a preschool. I had 51 little people every day. And then, I had a challenging experience trying to create my family. And then unfortunately down the line, I had a traumatic life event that my family changed. And over those courses of those 2 decades, I went back to school and did some studying and really took on my calling of helping other women and families navigate these really, really challenging, emotional, debilitating, heartbreaking moments in their lives. So I saw a lot of similarities with my clients because you're thrust into this new kind of arena. First it was the fertility world, and then second was the family court. And you go in naively thinking like there is going, especially when you're in this high conflict divorce, you go in there naively thinking that there's going to be support and help. There's going to be, a negotiation. It's going to be okay. And then you realize you're plunked into the system that has total different language. That's why you're so important, like forensic auditing and all the things that you come in and do. And you need sustainability. You need resilience. You need fortitude and perseverance. And, that's where I come in. That's where I come in to help people.
And I think that is enormous because, as I said earlier, we don't make great decisions out of stress and out of emotion. We don't perform at our best, and our logic isn't quite there. And having somebody, especially ahead of time, one of the things I think is so important that you help with as well is not just while it's happening, but preparing for it before it happens, and the planning, and understanding that when you get in this situation, if you've already thought through 2 or 3 options, you're so much better off because you're not thinking on your feet in the same way when you're in the middle of a negotiation, when you're in a mediation, when somebody's sitting across the table and sometimes insulting you and degrading you, right? These are just not, but having somebody who makes you aware that that's going to happen, who guides you through that and is very objective in being able to get you there, I think is important. And, when I gave the intro, I specifically said, full-blown narcissist, but I also used the term narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah.
And people do throw many terms around that are not accurate. Everyone has heard of a nasty or a high conflict divorce. So I'm going to start with that one, right? That can come from different reasons, a lot of different things, but it's thrown out a lot. I am divorcing a narcissist. I am in a high conflict. What is a high conflict divorce? Can you kind of wrap it around, give it a little bit more of a definition?
I love that you brought that up because Lisa Johnson, you were part of the Divorcing in Tech. She gave 5. She was so powerful and kind of cut to the chase about it. Like these were the 5 singles that you would know that your divorce might be high conflict. If your ex is an active addict, your ex has mental health issues that are not being addressed, your ex is hiding marital assets, and your ex is abusive, or your ex displays anger that doesn't subside.
And it doesn't have to be all 5. I just want to throw that out.
It's not. These are some of the categories.
Correct.
That you're like, well, this anger isn't decreasing. It's just building and getting worse. Or all of a sudden you're like, they're hiding marital assets, which you didn't even know.
Correct.
Alicia shared these from an attorney who said, these are my touchstones. Yeah. These are the 5 things that if a client says these 5 things, oh boy, this might be a high conflict divorce.
Right.
And it goes back to what you said, it could be high conflict tendencies, some of the traits, or a full blown, narcissistic borderline personality.
Yeah. And you and I have spoken about this a lot. I mean, we hear people saying, I'm divorcing a narcissist. Almost every other person seems to be divorcing a narcissist. And not everyone is a narcissist, right? I mean, as we've just been saying, but they may be displaying narcissistic tendencies. And I do want to throw out whether they're clinically a narcissist or not clinically a narcissist. It doesn't make it any easier just because they don't have the clinical designation or diagnosis. It's still a difficult and a high conflict divorce.
Right.
But I am going to ask if you can give a little bit of a better understanding for the people listening. What is narcissism? And then what are kind of narcissistic tendencies? Because I think understanding who you are up against and the things you are up against can be helpful for people as well.
Well, their whole way of being is control and power. When I have to boil that down into, just explaining it from an emotional side.
Right.
Do you feel empowered within this relationship with this person, or are you disempowered? I am not, a therapist, I'm a coach, but I have a listening ear that when the stories that people share with me, does it have healthy boundaries? Do you feel safe? Are you able to express and use your voice in a clear way and are heard and validated? I kind of get triggered about this, and it's because there's so much attention on that other person's behavior that you're like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
What did I do wrong? Am I worthy of this? So I think when you ask me that question, if you feel disempowered within a relationship, if you don't have control over your physical space, your mental energy, your emotional energy, that you're walking on eggshells, you're hyper vigilant, meaning like you don't know, you're always hyper aware of what might trigger this other person. Those are all signs of unhealthy partners. So it doesn't matter if you have a diagnosis or if they're displaying some of these traits. It all boils down to, this is not healthy, it's high conflict, and it's toxic. So what can you do? And I hope that answered the question, but I am still kind of mulling over this, Hirsch, because I had a follow-up coaching session from the Divorcing Intact group. And when I was talking about reframing your thoughts about this, and what you're so good at is helping people realize that the perception of the situation that they're in isn't balanced.
Right.
You logically and black and white can show someone your financial well-being isn't balanced because this is what you were told, but this is an actuality.
Oh, I love that you're bringing this up. I got to tell you.
How it doesn't balance out. I got a little goosebumps, right? It's you can black and white show someone that this does not add up.
Right. And we talk about how they control you or control the situation. And, I had a client once say to me, well, he's never told me I cannot do that. But that doesn't mean that there's no control in there. They often are master manipulators, and so we were talking, same client, and I said, well, has he ever told you you don't deserve alimony or assets because he earned all the money? She said, yeah. Well, he was the one who went out and worked. That isn't, maybe indirectly, he's not saying you don't get, you won't get. He's planting that seed you don't deserve it. Right. And it's manipulating and controlling in a very different way than a very direct control. And these are things that can play in as well. So it is a little bit of a spectrum on,
Yes.
some of these things that we're talking about, which I think
Yes.
is so important. And then you've been devalued. You never brought a penny into the marriage, right? But
Right.
What have you brought into the marriage? Well, we got 4 kids. And if we had sent them to daycare, for me to get a job, it would have cost $30,000 more than I would have earned. Okay, well, there's money. Or, we've just saved $600, $800 a month in cleaning. Well, there's another $10,000. All of a sudden, you've brought $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to the marriage in a very different way that obviously has never been recognized or valued by someone in this situation. So these are some of the ways, I think, that people control without it being overtly controlling, right? Does that make sense?
Perfectly. And we had a great conversation about this within the coaching group because you typically in these dynamics, there's one person who's a really good giver, and one person you like to say is a receiver, but more of a taker.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is you think you're on the same team. You think that you're working for the whole, your family, the collective well-being. I want to share something because we were talking about strategies, and I want to share it here about how you can overrun some of the unconscious ways that this energy has been controlling you.
Yeah.
And it's not until you're in this really black and white, yes or no, judgmental system that you're like, wait a minute, I was talking about reframing and some cognitive therapy about using affirmations.
Right.
And one of my go-to affirmation, and I don't know if I told you this already, Hirsch, or you heard me say it, was when I was getting all my certificates and doing my my credits for everything. I took this meditation class because I was having a hard time, the mindfulness. I was, working and following Dr. Herbert Benson, who's like the leader in the relaxation response. And I took this course, and this beautiful woman had us do a 21-day challenge. And I was like, I'm all over this. So the 21-day challenge was really to write down a feeling you'd like to feel more of, a feeling that you'd like to feel less of, and kind of park that in your journal. But every day for the course of 21 or 28 days, you wrote down, I love and accept myself, and I'm entitled. I love and accept myself. And then fast forward, working with Dr. Diana Kirshner in her book, she had, and I'm entitled to miracles. So that is still my go-to affirmation. Like I have it on my mirror. I have it everywhere. I love and accept myself, and I'm entitled to miracles. And this last group I had, one of the comments I got, like we're doing in the chat comment, was, and it's still heartbreaking to me, it's hard to believe I'm entitled to anything.
Yeah.
Because
and unfortunately, it doesn't start there, right? It starts off, they're very loving, they're very praising, and it turns over time. And if you look at the progression and you look at how did I get to this, you're actually amazed at yourself for letting it sometimes get to what it is, I think we got time for probably one more thing to discuss before we go into the break. And I do think, when you're going through the divorce before it's final, you're so focused on it, you don't always think about what's happening afterwards. And it is going to be different. And it's important to know it's going to be different. And it doesn't mean that once you sign that paper and it's now final, that it's going to all be great. No. You still have a narcissist sitting, or narcissistic tendencies on the other side of the parenting table, right?
Right.
So it's still there. That doesn't change, and that still goes with you. So what are some of the strategies to sift through the emotional and financial abuse? And are there specific things people can do around the holidays? And then we're going to pick up on the holidays and Mother's Day after the break. But let's start with that.
Well, I think what I hear from, women who have experienced this is that they just want it to be over.
True.
So they're still in that fight or flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and part of it is, I just want this done. Yeah. I'll do whatever. And that's because you're in that hyper vigilant, hyper, protection stage. And circling back, that's why it's so important to have a team around you.
Yes.
Because you want it done. It's only human. Like, you just want this over with. You want the pain to stop and you want it to go away. But this, unfortunately, on the other side, there is post-divorce abuse.
Right.
It doesn't, and I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but it doesn't end. So what you need to do is, the sooner you can shift your focus from managing how that person's going to react,
right,
to inward about how and what you need, the stronger the split happens. And it's a practice, and it's a reframe and a retraining yourself. Because if you were in a long-term relationship or a short-term relationship, it's almost like you've been soaking in this energy.
Right. Right. And you lose yourself and you lose your worth and everything that comes with that. And I love what you're saying. I think there's so much more for us to pick up on this, but we do have to get to a break. Okay. Before we do, please share with everybody, how can they get in touch with you and learn more about you and
I would
get in
love,
touch.
you can reach out to me through my email. You know, you can email me at Kristen@KristenDarcy.com. It's right there, or visit my website. You know, I'm on Instagram and social media. You can direct message me, but probably email would be the best, or visit my website. And there's a big purple button on the top that says schedule now. you can schedule now.
And I encourage everyone to go. I'm just quickly going to spell it out for those that are on the podcasts. It's KristenDarcy.com. So please go there. There's a lot of great information, and then click that button and go for it. And we'll be right back.
You're so
Dear
good.
Jeffrey, I'm writing to you to remind you that Mother's Day is coming fast upon us. I'm also writing to remind you that your mother and I will have been married 50 years that day. Son, I was window shopping at Quest Fine Jewelers in Fairfax the other day. As you know, Quest Jewelers has been our family jeweler for over 20 years. This year again, Quest Jewelers didn't disappoint. They have so many fine pieces of jewelry, and the staff there were so friendly and helpful. The quality and brilliance of Quest Jewelry has always made the perfect gift for our family. Son, I found your mother Mother's Day pendant necklace and a very special 50th wedding anniversary ring I'm sure she'll be very excited about. Let's meet there this Saturday and get the perfect gift for your mom for this Mother's Day. Who knows? Maybe you will find something for your girlfriend, Amy. Quest Fine Jewelers is located at 8431 New Highway, Fairfax, Virginia. Their website, www.questjewelers.com. Or you can call them at 703-204-0111.
Hello and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. This is WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. My guest today is Kristen Darcy. We were speaking about a lot of things related to narcissism, to emotions, to how to react. We are talking about navigating a narcissistic divorce and Mother's Day. We've only started to touch on the Mother's Day piece, but I'm going to recap a couple things, and I always struggle reading my handwriting because I'm trying to listen, engage, and take notes. But we did talk a little bit about a high conflict divorce. What is it? The 5 great pieces to be thinking about as you go through them. The defined narcissism and what it is, how narcissists control others, how it's sometimes overt but not always, and being aware of sometimes being manipulated in a way that it doesn't seem like this other person is, but what it does to you, whether it does it financially and the outcome, whether it does the self-esteem that gets trampled on, whatever it might be, just be very careful. We spoke a little bit about what you're going to feel or experience before the divorce is over, after the divorce is over. Things like that are very important because you do have a new dynamic and new life that you've got to adjust to. And, you know, if you've been married 20 or 30 or even 40 years and then you're starting this new life, it's something to think about before you go into your new life. And I think we're going to get straight back into, we spoke a little bit about the holidays and the risks around it, the emotions around it, especially if you have children. And now, it's Mother's Day and they're not around, it makes it that much more difficult sometimes. There is not a consistent level, though, of emotions, right? I mean, our emotions jump around all the time, up, down, kind of sideways, especially sideways, it seems, when we go through a divorce. There are moments and situations of, if we can term them high-risk moments or situations that people are going to experience. And it's important that they're aware that these are going to come, but also to recognize they're here. How would you kind of define a high-risk moment? And talking about Mother's Day, does that fit in? Is that one of them?
Well, when I refer to moments of high risk, it's almost as if you get a plot of when things trigger.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty, you and I can talk about, well, if you're serving someone because you want discovery, that's an obvious moment of high risk, right? If you're going into court, those are moments of high risk.
Right.
But what I was really thinking about is, some of the times you don't even see them coming. And
right.
what I really encourage people to create a self-practice of self-nurturing, self-care, self-devotion, so that you have this reservoir, you have this fortitude already there. I had a client when we were working together, and we talked about really incorporating, a gratitude list. It's been around for a while. It's more mainstream, but, that really is a foundational tool
Right.
to help you change when you're so stuck. Go to gratitude, go into your heart through gratitude. So sometimes you can predict a moment of high risk, but other times you can't. Other times they just come out of nowhere and you're like, oh yeah, I should have had some forethought around this. But holidays in general, if we lump them under an umbrella, those are moments of high risk.
Right.
And you really don't know sometimes why the other person is going to be triggered, or if you're going to get triggered.
And I would add to that, if you read some of the research, and I can't say I fully understand it because we are talking biochemistry here, but a lot of your emotions are kind of triggered or they happen through chemical reactions in your body. And what is released, into your body, what is not released into your body, things like that. You could be walking down the street, crossing the street, singing your favorite song, and by the time you get to the other side of the street, you're in tears because all of a sudden something's happened and you don't know what's going on and you're totally thrown off. I think sometimes being able to identify that these things are going to happen, having that gratitude list, having tools to turn to that help you come out of this funk, if we can call it that, and get back into singing our favorite song at the beginning of that walk.
Yeah.
Are enormously helpful because they're going to happen, and you don't know when they're going to happen.
No, I love that you said that in the analogy that you used, because it is a biofeedback.
Yeah.
You are triggered, and what we have to create is a relationship that we know our system, our mental body, physical, spiritual, emotional body are sending us feedback.
Right.
And when you talk to yourself or have a conversation or have a loving, check in, my kids laugh at me because I'll say, oh, I'm triggered. Like, what was that? Like, what, Once you give it a voice, once you say this is happening, it's not a linear process of us being human and healing.
Correct.
It comes around, and I always call it the cha-cha dance. Like you go forward twice and maybe back once, but you're still cha-chaing, you're
right.
still making this progress. So when that happens, a moment of awareness of like, oh, I'm triggered, what do I feel, or what am I feeling, and what do I need? And what ends up happening is once you have this awareness, like I had one just the other day. I was bringing laundry up, happy in my own little world, walking up the next set of stairs, and I was like, a thought came in, and then before you know it, I was like, why am I feeling like I could just cry right now? And, I'm like, okay, what do you need? What's going on?
Right.
And it's a constant reframe and recheck, but it's also acceptance.
It is, and it's okay to do it as well, is the other thing I'll tell you. I mean, I used to be the quintessential stereotype CPA, CDFA. I used to laugh at self-care. Who needs that? You just need numbers, right? I mean, that was my world, right? I went through my divorce, and boy, did I become a believer in all of this. I listen to my body. My body talks to me in different ways. I know where my stress is carried, but it also helps you overcome those moments that much quicker. You know they're going to happen. It's okay that they're going to happen. It's healthy, but you need to know how to work with them. And I would say all of this could happen 20 times on Mother's Day, right? So what is some advice you would give people to manage these expectations for Mother's Day?
Well, as a mom, it's really setting the intention. Like, part of divorcing it with grace is the download that, I'd love to give away as a gift. It is to set the intention of the day.
Right.
And I think if you're coming from a relationship that you might not have felt cherished, or you might not have felt like you were that girl on the pedestal, there's that Miley Cyrus songs, I Can Buy Myself Flowers, I buy myself flowers. I go to Trader Joe's and I get $3.99. I'll show you. I have them right here.
There you go.
And to me, that uplifts me, and I think for women, as we move into Mother's Day, it's okay to say what you want and what you need.
Right.
What would you like for that day? I just like going for a walk with my kids. Sometimes you would think that would be asking them for a diamond ring, right?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes, especially as parents, we want to give to our kids all the time, right? And as we've mentioned throughout the whole show, that the divorce will change the family dynamic. It's a different family now. So if you have children, what is a way to create, or a new way maybe, to create and celebrate with that family and make this a special time to create good memories? What are some of the things that people can do?
Well, you know what? I'm so glad you kind of reframed or brought me back here, because I want to tell a story about the first year when I was going through the divorce. My daughter was only in kindergarten.
Wow.
And she came to me in tears and she said, "Who's going to take us shopping so I can get you a present for Mother's Day?"
Wow.
And she actually said it to my sister, unbeknownst to me. And I was like, "Grace." So I went and got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm like, "I would just love a super card from you."
Yeah.
And my sister sent this box of gifts for my kids that came in the mail, all wrapped and ready to go. And at that moment, when you're a mom, I was so concerned for her well-being.
Right.
Because her little life was so different.
Yeah.
So I think having conversations with your kids, asking yourself what your expectations were, it is different. Don't expect your ex to maybe acknowledge you. You're not going to get the acknowledgement of being that mother that you are. And probably the exact opposite is happening. They're probably saying you're parent alienating or not, influencing or whatever it is. So it goes back to you setting your daily intention. Like, what do you want to have happen that day?
Right.
Go to your gratitude. Do one nurturing item for you that day.
I like that.
And then, you know what? If you don't want to celebrate, don't celebrate. If you want to do something the day before, what can you manage? And then use this opportunity to create a different tradition.
Right. Right. And as you said, you're already a mom. You're a mom. You've been a mom since for a while, potentially. And I think you don't need a Hallmark holiday, so to speak, to know that. And you can celebrate it any day of the year. or you can appreciate being a mom any day of the year, right? I mean,
Right.
it doesn't have to be May 14th just because somebody else said that it's May 14th. So
right. I think it's really like acknowledging yourself, like acknowledging your family, and reframing of everything that you have done and are doing to keep your family functioning, to manage your family, to make sure everyone's everywhere that they need to be. They have clean clothes, they have food, like everything that's invisible for motherhood. What are you doing, every day to make sure the wellness of your baby?
That might be the way to celebrate. One kid does the laundry, one kid does the dishes, and they can see what motherhood's about, right?
I think
we are coming to the end. I wish we had another hour still because there are a lot of things. But one of the things I really want to touch on, because I think it plays so strongly into what we've been speaking about, is recently you and CC Schatz spearheaded, I think was an amazing event. We had several hundred people attended, called Divorce Intact. And there were people that missed it. I had clients that said, are we going to have reviews or reruns, so to speak? Can you talk a little bit about the day and then more about how they can kind of access the videos and kind of the conversations? Because there was so many incredible pieces, I thought, to the day.
It was really amazing, very well received. Hirsch, they were referring to you as, I have to watch the Money Guy again. So it's still live. You have to opt in. There's not a fee right now. Right. It's on my website, Divorcing Intact. And pretty soon, we're probably going to be discussing what we're going to be doing that. But there's still an opportunity to opt in and get the freebies. It was Lisa Johnson, who just wrote the book, Been There, Got Out. Tracy Malone, who is a powerhouse too, and she has narcissistic abuse support. You can just Google her name. It was you, it was I, and it was Cece. And of course, Karen, the angel reading about the spirituality and how you get grounded back in your spirituality, how that you create that connection of, wholeness for yourself. So we can maybe put that underneath or send that out, that you can still sign up for it and watch and watch all the other videos and sign up. We're going to leave it up for until the end of May, I believe, so that they can still get the freebies.
And I'm going to ask one more time, how can people get in touch with you before we wrap up?
You can just go straight to my website, KristenDarcy.com, KristenDarcy.com. And, the Divorcing Intact is there, all the video and the links are still up. And then you'll automatically get emails so that you can connect with Hirsch. Of course, you can do that now, but, you get all that information for the presenters.
And Kristen, I really appreciate, dealing with narcissism tendencies, whatever you want to call them, is very complicated. It's not an easy thing, especially as you going through it. I think people have walked away today who've listened that literally can put things into practice immediately, which is not an easy feat under any circumstances, I will say. So thank you for shedding so much great information for people that, and insights for people to be able to take. I highly recommend reach out, KristenDarcy.com. As we said, there are still the freebies from Divorce Intact. You can get the videos and watch some of the videos that we had and we put together on the interviews. I am Hirsch Sermon, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. If you have questions for me, for Kristen, or for Cece, who is my producer, who just makes the show amazing and makes it so easy to do, thank you to you as well. And I look forward to you all joining me on my next show. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.